She was left for being just a nurse. She returns as chief of surgery at his hospital empire with her son. You're fired. Dr. Aurora Blake stood frozen in the doorway of the executive boardroom, her nursing badge still clipped to her scrubs, staring at the man she'd married just 6 months ago. Damian Cross sat behind the massive mahogany desk like a king on his throne, his cold gray eyes showing no trace of the passion that had once burned between them. Damian, what are you talking about? I don't understand. I'm talking about the fact that my wife working as a nurse in my hospital is becoming an embarrassment to my family name. People are talking, Aurora. They're saying that Damian Cross couldn't even marry within his own social circle. The words hit her like physical blows. Aurora's hands instinctively moved to her still flat stomach, where their child was growing, a secret she'd planned to share with him tonight over a romantic dinner. An embarrassment? I'm your wife, Damian. I love you, and I thought you loved me. Love. His laugh was cold and bitter. Love doesn't change the fact that you're just a nurse, Aurora. Love doesn't make you suitable for the Cross family legacy. Have you ever been told that your life's work, your calling, your very identity wasn't good enough for someone you loved? Have you ever had the person you trusted most tear down everything you'd built and call it worthless? This is the story of a woman who was thrown away for being just a nurse, who rose from that devastating betrayal to become the most powerful surgeon in the country. But what her ex-husband doesn't know is that she's carrying a secret that will change everything. A secret that's been growing for 9 years, walking and talking and carrying his eyes and his stubborn chin. Stay with me for this incredible journey of betrayal, redemption, and the most shocking revelation that will shatter a billionaire's world. If you believe that success is the sweetest revenge, hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments what you would do in her situation. Let me take you back to the beginning of this extraordinary story and show you how a woman who was deemed not good enough became the one person who could hold a billionaire's empire in her hands. 9 years later, Dr. Aurora Blake stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of her corner office on the top floor of Cross Memorial Hospital, watching the morning sun cast golden light across San Francisco Bay. At 34, she commanded respect throughout the medical community as one of the youngest chief surgeons in the country's history. Her name appeared in medical journals. Her techniques were studied in universities, and hospitals across the nation tried to recruit her with offers that would make most people dizzy. But Aurora had built something here that couldn't be bought or stolen. She'd built a reputation, a legacy, and most importantly, a life for herself and her son that was everything the Cross family had said she could never achieve. Dr. Blake. Her assistant's voice came through the intercom. Your 9 o'clock is here. The new hospital board chairman wants to meet with you personally. Aurora smiled, straightening her white coat. After 9 years of climbing the medical hierarchy, she was finally at the top. Chief of surgery at one of the most prestigious hospitals on the West Coast. It was ironic that she'd achieved this position at Cross Memorial, the hospital that bore the name of the man who'd thrown her away for being beneath his family standards. Send him in, Jennifer. The door opened, and Aurora's world tilted on its axis. Damian Cross walked into her office with the same commanding presence that had first attracted her 10 years ago. He was older now, silver threading through his dark hair, lines around his eyes that spoke of stress and responsibility. But he was still devastatingly handsome, still carried himself with the confidence of a man who owned everything he surveyed. Which, technically, he did. Cross Memorial Hospital was the crown jewel of the Cross healthcare empire, a network of hospitals and medical facilities that stretched across 3 states. Dr. Blake, I presume? His voice was exactly as she remembered, deep and controlled, with just a hint of the warmth that had once made her heart race. I'm Damian Cross, chairman of the Cross Healthcare Board. He didn't recognize her. After 9 years, after building herself into someone completely different from the young nurse he'd dismissed, he had no idea who she was. Mr. Cross. Aurora's voice was steady, professional, giving away nothing of the chaos raging inside her. Welcome to Cross Memorial. I understand you wanted to discuss the surgical department's recent performance metrics. Actually, I wanted to meet the woman who's been making waves in the medical community. Your reputation precedes you, Dr. Blake. Harvard Medical School, Johns Hopkins residency, fellowship at Mayo Clinic. Impressive credentials. Aurora almost laughed at the irony. The same man who'd told her she wasn't good enough to bear his family name was now praising her achievements, completely unaware that she was the woman he'd destroyed and rebuilt herself into everything he'd claimed she could never be. Thank you. I believe in excellence, Mr. Cross. In this field, anything less than perfection can cost lives. Spoken like a true professional. Tell me, what brought you to Cross Memorial? With your credentials, you could work anywhere in the world. Aurora met his gaze directly, searching for any flicker of recognition. I was attracted by the hospital's reputation and the opportunity to lead a department that values innovation over tradition. It was a carefully chosen barb. The old Damien would have caught the subtle criticism of his family's obsession with social tradition over professional merit. But this older version seemed focused entirely on business metrics and hospital rankings. Well, your work here has been exceptional. Patient outcomes in your department have improved by 30% since your arrival. Surgical success rates are the highest in the region. I have an excellent team. But leadership starts at the top. I've reviewed your files, Dr. Blake. You've transformed this department into something remarkable. As Damien spoke, Aurora found herself studying his face, looking for traces of the man she'd once loved desperately enough to marry him despite their different backgrounds. He seemed harder now, more focused on business than the passionate young man who'd swept her off her feet during her nursing residency. I'm curious, Damien continued, settling into the chair across from her desk with easy confidence. Your personnel file shows you're a single mother. That must make your demanding schedule challenging. Aurora's blood chilled. Her personnel file mentioned Marcus, her 9-year-old son, but gave no details about his father. I manage my professional and personal responsibilities quite well, Mr. Cross. I'm sure you do. I only mention it because work-life balance is something I've been thinking about lately. The demands of running a healthcare empire can consume your entire life if you're not careful. There was something in his voice, a weariness that hadn't been there 9 years ago. Aurora wondered if Damien had found happiness in the life he'd chosen, the proper society marriage his family had demanded after he'd thrown her away. Do you have children, Mr. Cross? Something flickered across his face. Pain, perhaps, or regret. No. My ex-wife and I were never able to have children. It was one of the factors that led to our divorce. Aurora's heart stopped. Ex-wife. Damien was divorced. The marriage he'd destroyed their relationship to pursue had failed. I'm sorry to hear that. These things happen. Sometimes what we think we want isn't what actually makes us happy. Before Aurora could respond, there was a knock on her office door. Come in, she called, grateful for the interruption. The door opened, and Marcus Blake bounded into the room with the energetic confidence of a 9-year-old who owned the world. He was tall for his age, with dark hair and startling gray eyes that were an exact match for the man sitting across from Aurora's desk. Mom, Mrs. Peterson said I could come up and see your office before she takes me to school. Marcus stopped short when he saw Damien, his natural curiosity overriding his shyness. Oh, sorry. I didn't know you had a meeting. Aurora's heart pounded as she watched Damien's face. He was staring at Marcus with a puzzled expression, clearly struck by something, but unable to identify what it was. Marcus, this is Mr. Cross, the chairman of the hospital board. Mr. Cross, this is my son Marcus. Hello, sir. Marcus stepped forward with the polite confidence Aurora had taught him, extending his hand for a proper handshake. Damien shook the boy's hand, his eyes never leaving Marcus's face. Hello, Marcus. You have quite a grip there. My mom says a handshake tells people who you are before you even say anything. Your mother is very wise. Damien's voice was slightly strained, and Aurora could see him struggling to place why Marcus looked so familiar. The resemblance was striking if you knew what to look for. Marcus had Damien's bone structure, his aristocratic nose, the same stubborn set to his chin. But more than that, he had Damien's intelligence, his natural confidence, the way he carried himself like he belonged wherever he was. What grade are you in, Marcus? 4th grade, but I'm taking some 5th grade classes because the regular work is too easy. I want to be a doctor like my mom when I grow up. That's quite an ambition. What kind of doctor? A surgeon, like Mom. She saves people's lives every day. She's the best doctor in the whole hospital. Aurora felt her throat tighten with emotion. Marcus was her greatest achievement, her most perfect creation. He was brilliant and kind and confident, everything she could have hoped for in a child. And he was also living proof that she had given Damien exactly what he'd wanted, a legacy, an heir, a continuation of his bloodline. He just didn't know it. "Marcus, Mrs. Peterson is waiting for you in the lobby," Aurora said gently. "You don't want to be late for school." "Okay, Mom." Marcus hugged her goodbye, a quick, fierce embrace that filled Aurora with warmth. "Nice meeting you, Mr. Cross." "Nice meeting you too, Marcus." After Marcus left, the office felt heavy with unspoken tension. Damien sat quietly for a long moment, his brow furrowed in thought. "Remarkable child," he said finally. "I think so. How old did you say he was?" "I didn't say." "He's 9. Aurora watched Damien's face carefully, waiting to see if he would do the math. 9 years old. 9 years since their marriage had imploded. 9 years since she'd walked out of his life carrying his child and never looked back. 9 years old. Damien repeated the words slowly, as if testing them. "And his father? Isn't part of our lives. By choice." Aurora met his gaze directly. "His choice. I see." Damien stood up, moving to the window where Aurora had been standing when he arrived. "Dr. Blake, can I ask you something personal?" "You can ask. Have we met before? There's something about you that seems familiar." Aurora's pulse quickened, but her voice remained steady. "I don't believe so, Mr. Cross. I think I would remember meeting the owner of the hospital." "Perhaps. Sometimes faces remind us of other people, other times." He turned back to face her. "Your son has very distinctive eyes. Quite striking. I've been told they run in his father's family." "And his father's family is?" "As I said, not part of our lives." Damien nodded slowly, but Aurora could see the wheels turning in his mind. He was a smart man, successful in business because he could read people and situations. The pieces were all there if he chose to put them together. "Well, Dr. Blake, I should let you get back to your work. I'm sure you have surgery scheduled." "Actually, I do. A complex cardiac procedure this afternoon that requires several hours of preparation." "Of course. Thank you for taking the time to meet with me. I look forward to working with you as we continue to build Cross Memorial's reputation." "Mr. Cross." Aurora called as he reached the door. "Yes. You mentioned your ex-wife earlier. If you don't mind my asking, what happened? You said you wanted children." Damien's face darkened with what looked like regret. "I made some very poor decisions when I was younger. I let my family's expectations override my own judgment about what mattered in life. Meaning I threw away the best thing that ever happened to me because I was too stupid and arrogant to recognize her worth." The admission hung in the air between them, and Aurora felt a complex mixture of satisfaction and old pain. After 9 years, Damien finally understood what he'd lost. But his regret came far too late to matter. That must be difficult to live with. It is. Especially now, when I'm successful enough that none of the things I thought mattered actually matter at all. "What do you mean?" "I mean that social status and family connections and all the things I was taught to value are meaningless when you come home to an empty house every night. When you realize you sacrificed love for approval from people who never really cared about your happiness anyway." Aurora studied his face, seeing genuine pain in his eyes. "And your ex-wife? The one you divorced to marry someone more suitable? Also divorced me, eventually. Turned out that marriages based on social compatibility rather than genuine connection don't tend to last." "I'm sorry. Don't be. I got exactly what I deserved." After Damien left, Aurora sat in her office trying to process what had just happened. For 9 years, she'd imagined this moment, planned for it, dreaded it. She'd built her entire career around the possibility that she might one day face the man who'd thrown her away and show him exactly what he'd lost. But she'd never imagined he would be so changed, so obviously regretful about the choices he'd made. The arrogant young man who'd called her just a nurse seemed to have been replaced by someone who understood the cost of his pride. The question was what to do with that knowledge. Should she tell him who she was? Should she reveal that Marcus was his son? Should she explain that the woman he claimed to regret losing was sitting right in front of him, successful beyond anything he believed possible? Aurora's phone buzzed with a text message from Mrs. Peterson, Marcus's nanny. "Marcus wants to know if the nice man from your office is coming to his soccer game this weekend. He said he seemed sad, and maybe watching kids play would make him happy." Aurora smiled despite herself. Marcus had inherited more than just Damien's looks. He had Damien's ability to read people, to sense when someone was struggling emotionally. It was a gift that would serve him well in whatever field he chose. But it also meant that Marcus had picked up on something in Damien, some connection or familiarity that he couldn't name, but had felt nonetheless. That afternoon, Aurora performed a complex heart surgery with her usual precision, but her mind kept drifting to the conversation in her office. Damien had looked at Marcus with such intensity, as if he was trying to solve a puzzle he couldn't quite grasp. How long would it take him to figure it out? How long before he realized that the accomplished chief of surgery he'd been praising was the same woman he'd fired for being beneath his family standards? And what would he do when he discovered that Marcus was his son? Dr. Blake, her surgical resident, interrupted her thoughts. The patient is ready for the final sutures. Thank you, Dr. Martinez. Aurora refocused on her work, pushing thoughts of Damien aside. Whatever complications his presence brought to her life, she had responsibilities here. People depending on her skill and judgment. But as she completed the surgery, Aurora couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change. After 9 years of building a life separate from Damien Cross, he was back in her world. And this time, she held all the cards. 3 days later, Aurora was reviewing surgical schedules when Jennifer knocked on her office door. Dr. Blake, Mr. Cross is here to see you again. He doesn't have an appointment, but he says it's urgent. Aurora's pulse quickened. Send him in. Damien entered her office looking haggard, as if he hadn't slept in days. His usually perfect appearance was disheveled, his expensive suit wrinkled, his hair mussed as if he'd been running his hands through it. Mr. Cross, you look like you've seen a ghost. Maybe I have. He moved to her desk with purposeful strides. Dr. Blake, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. I'm always honest, Mr. Cross. Are you Aurora Mansfield? The question hit her like a physical blow, even though she'd been expecting it. Aurora kept her expression neutral, but she could feel her carefully constructed walls beginning to crumble. I'm Dr. Aurora Blake. That's not what I asked. Damien leaned forward, his gray eyes intense with desperate hope. Blake is your married name, isn't it? Your maiden name was Mansfield. You were a nurse here 9 years ago. You were married to me. Aurora stood up slowly, moving to the windows that overlooked the city. Below them, people hurried along sidewalks, living their lives, unaware that in this office, 9 years of secrets were about to explode into the open. Why do you think I'm your ex-wife, Mr. Cross? Because I spent the last 3 days going through personnel files from 9 years ago. Because I found employment records for Aurora Mansfield, a nurse in the cardiac unit who was terminated without cause. Because the photo in that file, even though it's 9 years old, looks exactly like you. Aurora turned to face him, and for the first time since he'd walked back into her life, she let her professional mask drop completely. Hello, Damien. The words were simple, but they carried the weight of 9 years of pain, struggle, triumph, and carefully guarded secrets. Damien staggered backward as if she'd struck him. Oh my God, Aurora, it really is you. It really is. But how? You're a surgeon. You're the chief of surgery. When we were married, you were just a nurse. Yes, I remember. Just a nurse. That was the problem, wasn't it? Damien's face crumpled with anguish. Aurora, I'm so sorry. I was such an idiot. Such an arrogant, stupid idiot. Yes, you were. I destroyed the best thing in my life because I was too proud to see what I had. You destroyed our marriage because you cared more about your family's approval than about the woman who loved you. I know, and I've regretted it every day for 9 years. Aurora studied his face, seeing genuine remorse, but also something else. Fear, perhaps, or desperate hope. What do you want, Damien? Why are you here? I want to apologize. I want to tell you that you were right about everything. That love should have been enough. That who you were, who you are, was always more than enough. Apology noted. Aurora, please. I know I have no right to ask for anything from you. But seeing you like this, successful and confident and brilliant, it's made me realize how completely I failed you. You didn't fail me, Damien. You revealed who you really were. And that information helped me make better choices going forward. Better choices? Like building a life that had nothing to do with people who valued status over substance. Like raising my son to judge people by their character, not their job title or family connections. Your son. Damien's voice grew quiet, careful. Marcus. Yes, Marcus. Aurora, I have to ask you something, and I need you to tell me the truth. Aurora's heart pounded, but her voice remained steady. What? Is he mine? The question she'd been dreading for 9 years hung in the air between them. Aurora looked at this man who had once been her everything, who had thrown her away and broken her heart, who was now looking at her with desperate hope and terrible fear. Why would you think that? Because he looks exactly like I did at that age. Because he has my eyes, my bone structure, my mannerisms. Because you said his father chose not to be part of his life, and I know I chose to end our marriage. Damien's voice grew more urgent. Aurora, please. Is Marcus my son? Aurora moved back to her desk, putting physical distance between them as she struggled with the weight of the secret she'd carried for nearly a decade. Do you remember our last conversation, Damien? Do you remember what you said to me? Every word. It haunts me. Then you remember calling me an embarrassment to your family name. You remember firing me from my job because being married to a nurse reflected poorly on your social status. Yes. Do you remember telling me that love wasn't enough? That I wasn't suitable for the Cross family legacy? Aurora, please. Do you remember throwing me out of your house and your life because I was just a nurse and you needed a wife who was worthy of your family's expectations? I remember, and I've regretted it every single day since. Aurora sat back down behind her desk, using its solid presence as armor against the emotions threatening to overwhelm her. I found out I was pregnant 3 weeks after you divorced me. The words hit Damien like a physical blow. He actually staggered, gripping the back of the chair for support. Pregnant. 3 weeks after you told me I wasn't good enough to be your wife. I discovered I was carrying your child. Why didn't you tell me? Aurora's laugh was bitter and painful. Tell you what, that the woman you discarded for being beneath your standards was pregnant with your heir? That the nurse you'd fired was carrying the Cross family legacy you claimed to care so much about? I would have done the right thing. The right thing? Like what, Damien? Marry me again out of obligation? Take my child and raise him in your world while keeping me as some kind of shameful secret? No, I would have. I don't know what I would have done, but I had a right to know. You had a right to know when you were my husband and I was carrying our child. You lost that right when you decided I wasn't worthy of the Cross family name. Damien collapsed into the chair, his face pale with shock and regret. A son. I have a son. You have a biological contribution to my son's existence. That's all. Aurora, please. I know I have no right to ask for anything from you. But can I get to know him? Can I be part of his life? Why? So you can decide he's not good enough either? So you can judge whether the child of a nurse meets your family's standards? No, because he's my son, and I've already missed 9 years of his life. Because I want to be the father I should have been from the beginning. Aurora stared at him, seeing the pain and regret in his eyes, but also remembering the cruelty he'd shown her when she was young and vulnerable and desperately in love with him. Marcus doesn't know who you are. He's never asked about his father because I told him his father wasn't able to be part of our lives. What will you tell him now? I don't know. That depends on what you plan to do with this information. I want to know him. I want to be his father, if he'll let me. And what about your family? What about the Cross legacy and social expectations? What happens when your grandmother finds out you have a son with the nurse she thought was so unsuitable? Damien's jaw tightened with resolve. My family's expectations cost me the only woman I ever loved and 9 years with my son. I won't let them cost me anything else. Pretty words, Damien. But you said pretty words before, too. I know I have to prove myself. I know I don't deserve your trust or forgiveness. But Aurora, please, give me a chance to show you that I've changed. Aurora looked at this man who had once been her whole world, who had destroyed her heart and inadvertently set her on the path to becoming everything she was today. He seemed genuinely remorseful, truly changed by whatever experiences had shaped him over the past 9 years. But she'd also learned to be cautious with her heart, to protect herself and Marcus from people who might hurt them. One chance, she said finally. You can meet Marcus properly, as his father. But Damien, if you hurt him in any way, if you make him feel unwanted or ashamed or not good enough, you'll never see him again. Do you understand? I understand. And this doesn't change anything between us. This is about Marcus having the opportunity to know his father, nothing more. I understand that too. Aurora picked up her phone and dialed Mrs. Peterson's number. Mrs. Peterson, could you bring Marcus to my office, please? There's someone I'd like him to meet properly. As they waited, Aurora studied Damien's face. He looked nervous, excited, terrified, and hopeful all at once. The powerful businessman who commanded a healthcare empire was reduced to an anxious father about to meet his son for the second time, but the first time as his actual father. Aurora, Damien's voice was quiet, uncertain. What should I tell him? How do I explain why I wasn't there before? You tell him the truth, that you made mistakes when you were younger, and that you're sorry you missed so much of his life. And if he asks why I made those mistakes, then you better have a good answer. Because Marcus is brilliant, and he won't be satisfied with vague explanations. A few minutes later, Mrs. Peterson knocked on the office door. Come in, Aurora called. The door opened, and Marcus bounded in with his usual energy, stopping short when he saw Damien sitting in the chair across from his mother's desk. Oh, hi, Mr. Cross. Are you having another meeting with my mom? Actually, Marcus, Mr. Cross asked to see you specifically. Aurora's voice was gentle but serious. There's something we need to tell you. Marcus looked between them with the sharp intelligence he'd inherited from his father. Is everything okay? You both look really serious. Aurora took a deep breath. Marcus, do you remember when you asked me about your father? Yeah. You said he wasn't able to be part of our lives. That's true. But now things have changed. Aurora gestured toward Damien. Marcus, this is your father. Mr. Cross is your dad. Marcus stared at Damien with wide gray eyes, processing this information with the same analytical mind that made him excel in school. You're my dad. I am. Damien's voice was thick with emotion. And I'm very sorry that I haven't been part of your life until now. Why not? The question was simple, direct, and completely devastating. Damien looked at his 9-year-old son, seeing his own eyes and bone structure, but also Aurora's kindness and intelligence, and tried to find words that would explain 9 years of absence without destroying the boy's faith in him. Because I made some very bad decisions when I was younger. I hurt your mother, and I didn't know you existed until a few days ago. You didn't know about me? No. And that's my fault, not your mother's. She had very good reasons for not telling me. Marcus looked at Aurora with questions in his eyes. Mom, why didn't you tell him about me? Aurora chose her words carefully. Because when your father and I were married, we had some very serious disagreements about what was important in life. I wasn't sure he was ready to be the kind of father you deserved. But he's ready now? That's what we're going to find out. Marcus turned back to Damien with the fearless curiosity of a child who'd been raised to believe he was worthy of love and respect. Do you want to be my dad? More than anything in the world. Even though I want to be a doctor like Mom instead of a businessman like you? Damien smiled for the first time since learning about Marcus's existence. Especially because you want to be a doctor like your mom. She's the most amazing woman I've ever known. She is pretty amazing, Marcus agreed. She saves people's lives every day, and she never misses my soccer games, and she helps me with my science projects even when she's really tired. Tell me about your science projects. Well, last month I built a model of the human heart that actually pumps fake blood through chambers. And before that, I made a volcano that erupts when you mix different chemicals. Mom helped me understand why the reactions work the way they do. Damien listened with genuine fascination as Marcus described his various academic interests and achievements. Aurora watched this first real conversation between father and son with a complex mixture of emotions. There was obvious chemistry between them, a natural connection that transcended the years of separation. Marcus, Damien said finally, I know this is all very confusing and sudden, but I want you to know that I'm going to do everything I can to be a good father to you, if you'll let me. What does that mean exactly? It means I want to come to your soccer games and help with your science projects and hear about your day at school. It means I want to be someone you can count on and trust, and maybe even be proud of someday. Can I ask you something? Anything. Why did you hurt my mom? The question stopped Damien cold. He looked at Aurora, who nodded slightly, giving him permission to answer honestly. Because I was young and stupid, and I let other people convince me that things like money and social status were more important than love. I thought your mother wasn't good enough for my family because she was a nurse instead of something they considered more prestigious. But nurses are really important. They take care of people when they're sick and scared. You're absolutely right. Nurses are heroes. Your mother was a hero, and I was too foolish to see it. And now she's a surgeon, which is even more important. Now she's the chief of surgery, which makes her one of the most important doctors in the whole hospital. Marcus beamed with pride. I know. Everyone here thinks she's amazing. They're right to think that. Aurora felt her throat tighten with emotion as she watched this conversation unfold. Despite everything that had happened between them, Damien was saying exactly the right things to Marcus, treating him with the respect and genuine interest that would build a foundation for their relationship. "Marcus," Aurora said gently, "this is a lot to process all at once. Why don't you think about it tonight? And tomorrow you can ask Mr. Cross any other questions you have. Can I call you Dad, or should I keep calling you Mr. Cross?" Damien's eyes filled with tears he was clearly struggling to control. "You can call me whatever feels right to you. I think I'd like to try calling you Dad and see how it feels. I'd like that very much." After Marcus left with Mrs. Peterson, Aurora and Damien sat in heavy silence, both processing what had just happened. "He's incredible," Damien said finally. "Brilliant and confident and kind. Everything I could have hoped for in a son. He's had a good life. Stable, loving, full of opportunities to explore his interests. Because of you. Because you gave him everything I couldn't. I gave him what every child deserves. Love, security, and the belief that he can become anything he wants to be." Damien looked at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Aurora, I know I have no right to ask this, but is there any chance? Could we ever be a family? Really be a family?" Aurora felt her heart skip, but her voice remained steady. "We are a family, Damien. You, me, and Marcus. But that doesn't mean we're a couple. I know. Seeing you with him, seeing the life you've built, the woman you've become. I can't help but wonder what might have been possible if I hadn't been such an idiot 9 years ago. 9 years ago is over, Damien. What matters now is what kind of father you're going to be to Marcus. The best father I can be. I promise you that. Don't promise me. Promise him. He's the one who deserves your commitment and consistency." Damien nodded, understanding that Aurora wasn't going to make this easy for him. She'd learned to protect herself and Marcus from disappointment, and he would have to prove over time that he deserved their trust. But as he looked at the woman who had once been his wife, who had become everything he'd claimed she never could be, Damien felt something he hadn't experienced in 9 years. Hope. Hope that maybe, somehow, he could earn back what he'd thrown away. Hope that the family he'd always wanted was sitting right in front of him, and this time he was wise enough to recognize it. The question was whether Aurora would ever be able to forgive him enough to let him back into her heart, or whether the damage he'd done was too great to overcome. Only time would tell if love really could be enough, after all. Over the following weeks, Damien threw himself into learning how to be a father with the same intensity he'd once applied to building his business empire. He attended Marcus's soccer games, sitting in the bleachers with the other parents and cheering louder than anyone when his son scored a goal. He helped with homework, marveling at Marcus's advanced understanding of science and mathematics. He even attempted to learn about art when Marcus expressed interest in following his mother's creative side, but it wasn't always smooth. 9 years of absence couldn't be erased overnight, and there were moments when the artificial nature of their relationship became painfully apparent. "Dad, why don't you live with us?" Marcus asked one evening as Damien was driving him home from a baseball game. Damien gripped the steering wheel tighter, choosing his words carefully. "Because your mom and I aren't married anymore, son. But lots of divorced parents still live together for their kids. Jimmy Henderson's parents are divorced, but they share a house. Every family is different, Marcus. Your mom and I, we have some complicated history that we're still working through. Because you hurt her feelings when you were younger? Because I hurt her much more than just her feelings. I made choices that broke her trust in me, and trust is something that has to be earned back slowly." Marcus was quiet for a moment, processing this with the same analytical mind he applied to everything else. "Do you love her?" The question hit Damien like a physical blow. "Why do you ask?" "Because when you look at her, you get the same expression that Mr. Rodriguez gets when he looks at Mrs. Rodriguez. And they're really happy together." Damien pulled into Aurora's driveway and turned off the engine, needing a moment to compose himself before answering his son's impossibly perceptive question. "Yes, Marcus. I love your mother very much. I never stopped loving her, even when I was too stupid to show it properly." "Then why can't you just tell her that and fix everything?" "Because love isn't always enough to fix the damage we cause when we make bad choices. Sometimes we have to prove that we've changed before the people we hurt can trust us again." "How do you prove you've changed?" "By being consistent. By showing up when I say I will. By putting you and your mom first, even when it's difficult or inconvenient. And how long does that take? Damien smiled at his son's practical approach to complex emotional situations. I don't know, son. Maybe forever. But that's okay, because proving myself to you and your mom is the most important thing I'll ever do. As they walked to the front door, Damien reflected on how much his priorities had shifted in just a few weeks. Board meetings that had once seemed crucial now felt secondary to Marcus's soccer schedule. Business deals that had consumed his attention now took a back seat to helping with science projects. Aurora opened the door before they could knock, her face lighting up when she saw Marcus, but maintaining careful neutrality when her eyes met Damien's. How was the game? We won 7-3, and Dad bought me a hot dog and nachos and let me have a Coke even though you said I shouldn't have too much sugar before dinner. Marcus announced with the honesty of a child who hadn't yet learned the art of selective information sharing. Aurora raised an eyebrow at Damien. Did he now? It was a special occasion, Damien said defensively. First baseball game we attended together. Uh-huh. And I suppose the ice cream stop on the way home was also part of this special occasion. Marcus's eyes widened in betrayal. How did you know about the ice cream? Because you have chocolate on your shirt, and your father has that guilty expression he used to get when he knew he'd done something I wouldn't approve of. The casual reference to their shared past hung in the air, a reminder that despite everything that had happened, Aurora and Damien had once known each other better than anyone else in the world. I should go, Damien said quickly. Marcus, I'll see you Thursday for your science fair, right? Right. And Dad, thanks for coming to my game. It was really cool having you there. The simple gratitude in his son's voice nearly brought Damien to his knees. Thank you for letting me be there, son. As Damien turned to leave, Aurora called after him. Damien? A word. She stepped onto the porch, closing the door behind her so Marcus couldn't overhear their conversation. Is everything all right? Damien asked. I need to warn you about something. Your grandmother called the hospital today. Damien's blood ran cold. What did she want? She'd heard rumors about you spending time with a child, and she wanted to know if it was true that you had a son. What did you tell her? I told her that I couldn't discuss your personal life, and that she should speak with you directly. But Damien, she knows. I could hear it in her voice. She's figured out who I am and who Marcus is. How much does she know? Enough to cause problems. She mentioned that the Cross family had standards to maintain, and that illegitimate children reflecting poorly on the family name. Damien's jaw tightened with familiar anger. Marcus isn't illegitimate. He's my son. To your family, there's no difference. I wasn't a suitable wife 9 years ago, and I'm certainly not a suitable mother for the Crosshair now. I don't care what my family thinks. Don't you? Because 9 years ago, you cared enough to throw away our marriage for their approval. That was different. I was different. Prove it. Before Damien could respond, Aurora had gone back inside, leaving him standing on her porch with the weight of his family's expectations pressing down on him like a familiar burden. The next morning, Damien arrived at his office to find his grandmother, Eleanor Cross, waiting for him. At 78, she was still formidable, with silver hair styled in a perfect chignon and the kind of presence that made people straighten their spines unconsciously. Grandmother, this is an unexpected visit. Sit down, Damien. We need to discuss this situation you've created. What situation is that? Don't play games with me. I know about the child. I know you've been gallivanting around town with some boy, playing father to a bastard. Marcus is not a bastard. He's my son. He's the product of an inappropriate relationship with a woman who was never suitable for this family. A nurse, for God's sake. I thought we dealt with that embarrassment years ago. Damien felt the familiar pattern trying to reassert itself. His grandmother's disapproval, the family's expectations, the pressure to choose status over love. But this time, he had something to fight for that was more important than their approval. Aurora Blake is the chief of surgery at Cross Memorial Hospital. She's one of the most respected cardiac surgeons in the country. She's also your ex-wife who trapped you with a pregnancy you knew nothing about. She didn't trap me. I abandoned her. Eleanor's eyes flashed with irritation. You made a practical decision based on the best interests of the family. That woman was never appropriate for the Cross name, and this child changes nothing. This child is your great-grandson. This child is a mistake that needs to be managed discreetly. I've spoken with our attorneys, and they believe we can arrange for financial support without any formal acknowledgement of paternity. Damien stood up abruptly, his patience finally exhausted. "Get out." "Excuse me." I said get out of my office. "And don't come back until you're ready to treat my son with the respect he deserves." "Damien, be reasonable. Think about what's best for the family, for the business. We can't have this scandal affecting our reputation. The only scandal here is the way this family treats people who don't meet their arbitrary standards. Marcus is brilliant and kind, and everything this family should be proud to claim. He's illegitimate. He's my son. And if you can't accept that, then maybe it's time for you to step back from any involvement in my life or my business." Eleanor's face went white with shock. In 78 years, no one in the Cross family had ever spoken to her with such defiance. "You're making a mistake, Damien. The same mistake you made 9 years ago when you let that woman cloud your judgment. The mistake I made 9 years ago was listening to you instead of following my heart. I won't make that mistake again. And what about the business? What about the family legacy? You're willing to throw all of that away for some nurse and her child. I'm willing to prioritize what actually matters. My son, the woman who raised him, and building something meaningful instead of just profitable." Eleanor gathered her purse with the dignity of someone accustomed to having the last word. "I hope you know what you're doing, Damien. Because once you choose this path, there's no going back." "Good. I don't want to go back." After his grandmother left, Damien sat in his office trying to process what had just happened. For the first time in his life, he'd stood up to the family pressure that had shaped every major decision he'd ever made. It felt terrifying and liberating in equal measure. His phone buzzed with a text from Aurora. "Marcus's science fair starts at 7. He's really excited that you're coming." Damien smiled, his resolve strengthening. Whatever consequences came from defying his family, they were worth it if it meant being the father Marcus deserved. That evening, Damien arrived at Marcus's school to find the gymnasium transformed into a showcase of scientific achievement. Students stood beside elaborate displays, explaining their projects to judges and family members with nervous excitement. He found Marcus near the back corner, standing proudly beside a detailed model of the human circulatory system complete with working pumps and artificial blood. "Dad, you made it." Marcus's face lit up with genuine joy. "I wouldn't miss this for anything. Tell me about your project." For the next 20 minutes, Marcus explained the intricacies of cardiac function with the passion of someone who'd inherited both his parents' love of medicine. Damien listened with fascination, marveling at his son's advanced understanding of complex biological systems. "The heart is basically a pump," Marcus concluded, "but it's also so much more. It responds to emotions and stress and exercise. Mom says that's why she became a cardiac surgeon, because the heart is the most important organ, but also the most complicated. Your mom is very wise." "She is. And she says that understanding how the heart works helps you understand how people work too." "What do you mean?" "Well, if someone's heart is damaged, they might not be able to love properly until it's fixed. And sometimes fixing someone's heart takes a really long time and a lot of careful work." Damien stared at his son, struck by the profound wisdom in his simple analogy. "That's a very insightful observation. Mom helped me think about it. She says medicine isn't just about fixing people's bodies, but understanding how emotions and relationships affect physical health too." "And what do you think about that?" "I think maybe that's why some people get sick, because their hearts are broken and they don't know how to fix them." Before Damien could respond, Aurora appeared beside them, having finished her rounds of the other exhibits. "How's our scientist doing?" she asked, ruffling Marcus's hair with obvious affection. "Dad really likes my project. I explained about how emotional health affects cardiac function. Did you now?" Aurora glanced at Damien with an unreadable expression. "And what did your father think about that theory?" "I think our son is going to make an exceptional doctor someday," Damien said carefully. "He has insights that go far beyond his age. He gets that from both sides of his family," Aurora replied, but there was warmth in her voice that hadn't been there in weeks. The judge arrived at Marcus's station, and for the next 10 minutes, Marcus presented his project with the confidence of someone who'd been raised to believe his ideas mattered. The judge was clearly impressed, asking detailed questions that Marcus answered with enthusiasm and precision. "Excellent work, young man. This is graduate-level thinking applied to a middle school project." After the judge moved on, Marcus turned to his parents with barely contained excitement. "Do you think I have a chance at winning? Win or lose, I'm incredibly proud of you. Aurora said, hugging him tightly. Me too, son. This is amazing work. As they waited for the results to be announced, other parents approached to compliment Marcus's project and ask about his plans for high school science courses. Damien found himself standing beside Aurora, both of them watching their son interact with adults who clearly saw his potential. He's remarkable, Damien said quietly. He is. And he's been asking me questions about you. What kind of questions? Whether you're going to stay in his life. Whether he can trust you not to disappear when things get complicated. Damien felt his chest tighten. What did you tell him? I told him that trust has to be earned over time, but that so far you've shown up when you said you would. And what do you think? Do you think I'll stay? Aurora was quiet for a long moment, watching Marcus explain his project to another group of interested parents. I think you want to stay. I think you genuinely care about him and want to be a good father. But I also remember how quickly you changed your mind about what was important 9 years ago. How easily you let your family convince you to walk away from our marriage. I stood up to my grandmother today. I told her that Marcus and you are more important than the family's approval. Aurora turned to look at him directly. And how did that go? She threatened to disown me and cut me off from the family business. And I told her that was her choice to make. That I won't choose their approval over my son ever again. Aurora studied his face, searching for any sign that he was saying what he thought she wanted to hear rather than what he actually felt. Damien, I need you to understand something. Marcus has lived his entire life believing he was enough, exactly as he is. He's confident and secure because I've never let him feel unwanted or inadequate. I know. If you're going to be part of his life, you need to reinforce that message every single day. You can't let your family or anyone else make him feel like he's not good enough. I won't. I promise. And if your family pressures you to minimize your relationship with him, to keep him hidden or treat him like an embarrassment, then I'll cut them off completely. My son is more important than their outdated ideas about social status. Before Aurora could respond, the principal took the microphone to announce the science fair winners. Marcus won first place in his age category, and his face lit up with pure joy as he accepted his ribbon. Mom, Dad, I won. Damien felt tears he hadn't expected as he watched his son bask in well-deserved recognition. This brilliant, confident child was his legacy, more meaningful than any business empire or family fortune. We're so proud of you, Aurora said, embracing Marcus as photographers captured the moment. Both of us, Damien added, placing his hand on Marcus's shoulder. You're incredible, son. As the evening wound down and families began gathering their projects to leave, Marcus turned to his parents with a suggestion that caught them both off guard. Since I won first place, can we all go celebrate together? Like a real family. Aurora and Damien exchanged glances, both aware that Marcus was asking for more than just dinner. What do you think would be a good way to celebrate? Aurora asked carefully. Maybe we could go to that Italian place you like, Mom. And Dad could come too. And we could just be together like normal families do. The yearning in his voice was unmistakable. Despite all the careful explanations about why his parents weren't together, Marcus wanted what every child wanted, his family united and whole. That sounds like a wonderful idea, Damien said, looking to Aurora for approval. Okay, she agreed. But just dinner. Don't read more into this than what it is. The restaurant was warm and intimate, with checkered tablecloths and the kind of atmosphere that made conversation flow easily. Marcus chattered about his project, his plans for high school science courses, and his ideas for next year's science fair, while Aurora and Damien found themselves falling into the comfortable rhythm they'd once shared. Remember when we used to come here during my residency? Aurora said as they waited for dessert. You'd quiz me on cardiac procedures between courses, and you'd correct my pronunciation of medical terms, Damien replied with a smile. You were always the better student. I had to be. I couldn't afford to fail anything. You never failed anything. You were brilliant then, and you're even more brilliant now. Marcus looked between his parents with the satisfied expression of someone whose plan was working perfectly. You guys seem like you were really happy together. We were, Aurora said quietly. For a while. What happened? Aurora and Damien exchanged looks, both aware that their son deserved an honest answer, but struggling with how much truth a 9-year-old could handle. We wanted different things, Damien said finally. Or I thought we did. I was young, and I made some very poor decisions about what was important in life. Like what? Like thinking that other people's opinions mattered more than the feelings of the person I loved most. That sounds pretty stupid. It was extremely stupid. But you're not stupid anymore. Damien smiled at his son's direct approach to complex emotional issues. I'm trying not to be. But sometimes it takes time to prove that you've really changed. How much time? I don't know, son. That's up to your mom to decide. Marcus turned to Aurora with the expectant expression of someone who believed problems could be solved through logical discussion. Mom, how long do you think it will take for you to trust Dad again? Aurora nearly choked on her wine. Marcus, that's a very complicated question. Why? Either you trust someone or you don't, right? It's not that simple when someone has hurt you badly. Trust isn't just about believing they won't hurt you again. It's about believing they've really changed into someone who wouldn't want to hurt you. And you don't think Dad has changed? Aurora looked at Damien, seeing the hope and fear in his eyes as he waited for her answer. I think your father is trying very hard to change. I think he genuinely wants to be a good father to you and make up for the mistakes he made in the past. But you're not sure if he's changed enough. I'm not sure if I've healed enough to risk trusting him with my heart again. The honesty of her answer hit both Damien and Marcus with unexpected force. It was the first time Aurora had acknowledged that her reluctance wasn't just about Damien's character, but about her own fear of being hurt again. What would help you heal? Marcus asked with the earnest concern of someone who wanted to fix his mother's pain. Time. Consistency. Proof that the changes are real and permanent, not just temporary promises made to win me back. And if Dad proves all of that? Aurora smiled at her son's persistent optimism. Then maybe we could talk about being a real family. How long do you think that would take? I don't know, sweetheart. Maybe a long time. Maybe forever. Some damage can't be completely undone. But some damage can be healed if people work really hard at it. Sometimes. Marcus nodded thoughtfully, apparently satisfied with this answer. Okay, then I guess we just have to wait and see. After dinner, as they walked to their respective cars, Marcus hugged both parents goodbye with the fierce affection of a child who felt completely secure in their love. Thanks for celebrating with me, he said. This was the best day ever. Thank you for letting us share it with you. Damien replied, his voice thick with emotion. After Marcus was safely buckled into Aurora's car, Damien approached her driver's side window. Aurora, thank you for tonight. For letting me be part of this. He wanted you here. I won't deny him time with his father just because I have complicated feelings about you. I know, and I appreciate that you're putting his needs first. I always put his needs first. That's what parents do. I'm learning that. I'm learning a lot of things I should have known years ago. Aurora started her engine, signaling that the conversation was over. Good night, Damien. Good night. And Aurora? I meant what I said about my family. Whatever pressure they bring to bear, whatever threats they make, I won't let them interfere with my relationship with Marcus. We'll see. As Aurora drove away with their son, Damien stood in the restaurant parking lot feeling both hopeful and terrified. He'd meant every word about protecting Marcus from his family's interference, but he also knew how relentless Eleanor Cross could be when she set her mind to destroying something she saw as a threat. The next morning brought the first test of his resolve. Damien arrived at his office to find his cousin Richard waiting with a stack of legal documents and a grim expression. Morning, Damien. We need to talk. About what? About the family's concerns regarding your recent indiscretions. My relationship with my son isn't an indiscretion. Your public acknowledgement of an illegitimate child absolutely is. Do you have any idea what this could do to our business relationships? Our social standing. I don't care about our social standing. Richard placed the documents on Damien's desk with the satisfied air of someone who held all the cards. Then perhaps you'll care about this. It's a formal petition from the board of directors requesting your resignation as CEO. Damien felt ice form in his veins as he scanned the legal language. On what grounds? Moral turpitude. Bringing disrepute. It involves acknowledgement of a child born outside wedlock. It involves behavior that reflects poorly on the values this company was built upon. Values like integrity, compassion, and putting patients first. Values like discretion, appropriate social connections, and maintaining the reputation that allows us to attract investors and board members from the best families. Damien read through the petition more carefully, noting the names of board members who'd signed it. Most were family friends or business associates who'd known him for years. How many signatures do you have? Enough. Damien, this doesn't have to get ugly. Resign quietly, take a generous severance package, and everyone walks away happy. And my son can be provided for through discreet financial arrangements that don't require public acknowledgement of paternity. Absolutely not. Then you're prepared to lose everything? The company, your position, your inheritance? All for a woman who trapped you with a pregnancy and a child you've known for less than a month. Damien stood up, his decision crystallizing with sudden clarity. Get out of my office. Damien, be reasonable. I said get out. And take this petition with you. I'm not resigning, and I'm not hiding my relationship with my son. Then you're forcing us to take this public. The board will vote next week, and when they do, you'll be removed from your position with cause. No severance, no benefits, no company support. So be it. After Richard left, Damien sat in his office staring out at the city skyline and processing the magnitude of what he'd just chosen. His family was prepared to destroy his career, his financial security, and his social standing to punish him for claiming Marcus as his son. 9 years ago, those threats would have been enough to make him back down. 9 years ago, he'd chosen his family's approval over love. But 9 years of regret had taught him that some things were worth any price. His phone rang, interrupting his brooding. Mr. Cross? This is Jennifer from Dr. Blake's office. She asked me to call and let you know that Marcus was in an accident at school. Damien's blood turned to ice. What kind of accident? Is he hurt? He fell during recess and hit his head. He's conscious and alert, but Dr. Blake wanted you to know they're taking him to the emergency room as a precaution. Which hospital? Cross Memorial. Dr. Blake said she'd meet you there. Damien was in his car and racing across town before Jennifer finished speaking. Nothing else mattered now except getting to his son and making sure he was all right. He arrived at the emergency room to find Aurora pacing in the waiting area, still wearing her surgical scrubs with obvious tension in every line of her body. How is he? Damien asked without preamble. Conscious, alert, no signs of serious head trauma. But they're doing a CT scan to rule out any internal bleeding or swelling. What happened? He was playing soccer at recess and collided with another student. Went down hard and hit his head on the ground. The school nurse said he was disoriented for a few minutes. Damien sank into a chair beside Aurora, his hands shaking with residual adrenaline. Can we see him? After the CT scan. They should be done soon. They sat in tense silence, both consumed with worry for Marcus and acutely aware that this crisis had stripped away all the careful boundaries they'd maintained around their relationship. Aurora, I need to tell you something. My family is trying to force me out of the company because I won't hide my relationship with Marcus. What do you mean? They filed a petition with the board to remove me as CEO. They want me to resign and agree to keep Marcus's paternity secret in exchange for financial support. Aurora turned to face him fully. And what did you tell them? I told them no. I told them I'd rather lose everything than deny my son's existence. You're willing to give up your career? Your inheritance? Everything you've worked for? Everything I've worked for doesn't mean anything if I can't share it with the people I love. My company, my money, my social position, none of it matters if it comes at the cost of being Marcus's father. Aurora stared at him with an expression he couldn't read. You really mean that? I've never meant anything more in my life. Before Aurora could respond, a doctor approached them with Marcus's test results. Dr. Blake? Mr. Cross? I'm Dr. Patterson. Marcus's CT scan is completely normal. No signs of concussion or internal bleeding. He's asking for both of you. They hurried to Marcus's room, where they found him sitting up in bed with a bandage on his forehead and an annoyed expression on his face. This is so stupid, he announced as soon as he saw them. I feel fine. They won't let me go back to school. Because you hit your head, sweetheart, Aurora said, moving to his bedside to check his pupils and reflexes with practiced medical precision. Head injuries can be serious even when you feel okay. But I have a math test tomorrow, and if I miss it, I'll have to take the makeup exam, which is always harder. Damien smiled despite his lingering worry. I think your health is more important than a math test, son. Easy for you to say. You already finished school. True. But I never had grades as good as yours, so I think you can afford to miss one test. Really? What kind of grades did you get? Mostly B's and C's. I was too busy thinking about sports and girls to focus on studying the way I should have. What about you, Mom? Straight A's. Aurora replied without false modesty. I had to. I couldn't afford to lose my scholarship. So I get my athletic ability from Dad and my brain from Mom. You get your intelligence from both sides, Aurora corrected. Your father is very smart. He just didn't apply himself in school the way he should have. But he's successful now, right? He owns a whole hospital company. Aurora and Damien exchanged glances, both aware that Marcus didn't know about the family crisis that was threatening Damien's position. Success isn't just about money or position, Aurora said carefully. It's about making choices that align with your values and taking care of the people you love. And what are Dad's values? Damien felt the weight of his son's direct question, aware that his answer would shape Marcus's understanding of what kind of man his father was. My values are family, integrity, and using whatever resources I have to help people. Sometimes it's taken me a while to figure out what that means in practice. Like when you made mistakes with Mom. Exactly. I thought success meant having other people's approval and maintaining social status. Now I know it means being the kind of person my family can be proud of, even if other people don't approve, especially if other people don't approve. Sometimes doing the right thing means standing up to pressure from people who want you to make choices that compromise your integrity. Marcus nodded thoughtfully, like if someone wanted me to cheat on a test to get better grades. Exactly like that. Or if someone wanted me to pretend I wasn't proud to be your father because they thought it would look better socially. Would you ever do that? Never. Not for any reason. You're the best thing in my life, and I want everyone to know it. Aurora felt her throat tighten with unexpected emotion. Over the past few weeks, she'd watched Damien with Marcus, looking for signs that his commitment was superficial or temporary. But moments like this, when he spoke with such fierce conviction about his love for their son, made it harder to maintain her emotional distance. The doctor returned with discharge instructions, and soon they were walking through the hospital parking garage toward their cars. Mom, can Dad come home with us tonight? Marcus asked as Aurora helped him into his car seat. My head still hurts a little, and I think I'd feel better if both my parents were there. Aurora looked at Damien over the roof of her car, seeing her own concern reflected in his eyes. Marcus's request was emotional manipulation of the most innocent kind, but it was also the heartfelt desire of a child who'd been scared and wanted the comfort of both parents. It's up to your mom, Damien said carefully. Just for tonight, Aurora agreed. Until we're sure you're feeling completely better. Yes. Marcus's face lit up with triumph. This is going to be great. As they drove through the city toward Aurora's house, Damien found himself thinking about the strange turns his life had taken in the past month. For weeks ago, he'd been focused entirely on business metrics and board meetings. Now he was following his ex-wife home to take care of the son he'd just discovered, having just chosen potential financial ruin over denying his child's existence. It should have felt terrifying, but instead it felt like the first authentic choice he'd made in years. Aurora's house was Tell me about this project, he said, pointing to a detailed drawing of what appeared to be a heart monitor. I'm designing a better way to measure heart rhythms in kids. Current machines are scary and loud, so little kids get upset and that affects their heart rate, which makes the readings inaccurate. That's incredibly thoughtful. How would your design be different? It would look like a video game controller, and the monitor screen would show cartoon characters whose movements matched the heart rhythm. So kids would think they were playing a game instead of being scared of a medical test. Damien stared at his 9-year-old son with amazement. Marcus, that's brilliant. That could actually revolutionize pediatric cardiology. You think so? Mom said it was a good idea, but I wasn't sure if real doctors would think it was useful. Real doctors would think it was revolutionary. Have you shown this to anyone else? Just Mom and my science teacher. What? Because ideas like this could help thousands of children. You should consider applying for a patent. What's a patent? It's a way to protect your invention so that if someone wants to use your idea, they have to ask your permission and give you credit for creating it. Marcus's eyes lit up with excitement. Could we really do that? We could look into it. I know some people who specialize in medical patents. That would be so cool. Mom, did you hear? Dad thinks my invention is good enough for a patent. Aurora appeared in the doorway with hot chocolate and a smile that transformed her face. I heard, and I think Dad is right. Your idea could really help other children. This is the best day ever, even with the stupid accident at school. As they settled in the living room with hot chocolate and a movie, Damien found himself marveling at the comfortable domesticity of the scene. 9 years ago, He'd thrown away the chance to build this kind of life with Aurora. Now, through a combination of luck and determination, he was getting a second chance to be part of something real and meaningful. "Dad," Marcus said drowsily as the movie credits rolled. "Are you going to stay overnight? Like a real sleepover?" Damien looked at Aurora, who nodded reluctantly. "Just on the couch," she said quietly. "In case you need anything during the night." "Okay, that sounds perfect." After Marcus was tucked into bed with extra pillows and strict instructions to wake them if his head hurt, Aurora and Damien found themselves alone in her living room for the first time since he'd discovered Marcus's existence. "Thank you," Damien said quietly, "for letting me stay, for trusting me with him. You're his father. He wanted you here. And what do you want, Aurora?" The question hung between them, loaded with 9 years of unresolved history and the possibility of an uncertain future. "I want Marcus to be happy and secure. I want him to have a relationship with his father that enriches his life instead of complicating it. And what about us? Is there any chance we could rebuild what we lost?" Aurora was quiet for a long moment, studying his face in the soft lamplight. "I don't know if what we lost can be rebuilt. Too much has happened. We're different people now. Maybe we could build something new, something better than what we had before." "Based on what?" "The fact that we have a child together. Based on the fact that I've spent 9 years learning what really matters, and you've spent 9 years becoming the most remarkable woman I've ever known." "Pretty words, Damien. But you said pretty words before too." "I know, and I know that words aren't enough. But Aurora, I'm not the same man who threw away our marriage. I've learned from my mistakes." "Have you?" "Because today you told me your family is trying to destroy your career for acknowledging Marcus. 9 years ago, their pressure was enough to make you choose them over me. What happens when the pressure really starts building? Then I'll prove that I mean what I say about putting you and Marcus first. And if you lose everything, your company, your money, your social position, will you resent us for the sacrifices you had to make?" Damien moved closer to her on the couch, his eyes intense with conviction. "Aurora, listen to me. I've had everything the Cross family considers important. I've had wealth and status and social approval. And I've been miserable every single day for 9 years. That doesn't mean you'll be happy with us. It means I know the difference between what looks impressive from the outside and what actually matters. You and Marcus matter. Everything else is just details." Aurora studied his face, searching for any sign that he was saying what he thought she wanted to hear rather than what he truly believed. "Damien, I need you to understand something. I've built a good life for myself and Marcus. We're happy, secure, and successful. I won't risk disrupting that unless I'm absolutely certain you've really changed. What would convince you? Time, consistency, proof that when things get difficult, you choose us over convenience. How long? I don't know. Maybe months. Maybe years. Maybe forever. I have time. Do you? Because your family's pressure is just beginning. When they realize you're serious about refusing to deny Marcus, they're going to escalate their tactics. Let them. And when the media gets hold of this story, when your business rivals use it against you, when every social event becomes a minefield of whispered gossip and deliberate snubs, then I'll learn to live with it. Because the alternative is giving up my son and the woman I love, and that's not an option." Aurora felt her resolve wavering at the sincerity in his voice. For 9 years, she'd imagined what it would feel like to hear Damien say these words, to choose her over his family's expectations. Now that it was happening, she didn't know whether to trust it. "I need time to think," she said finally. "Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere. And if I decide I can't take the risk, if I decide that protecting Marcus is more important than giving you a second chance, then I'll respect your decision. But I'll still be his father, and I'll still be here if you ever change your mind." The next morning brought the first test of Damien's resolve in the form of a front-page story in the San Francisco Chronicle's business section. The headline read, "Cross Healthcare CEO acknowledges illegitimate son with former employee." The article detailed Damien's marriage to and divorce from Aurora, her employment as a nurse at Cross Memorial, and the recent revelation of Marcus's existence. It quoted anonymous sources within the Cross family expressing concern about the company's reputation and Damien's fitness to lead the organization. Damien read the article over coffee in Aurora's kitchen while she made breakfast for Marcus, who was feeling much better after his accident. "This is bad," Aurora said quietly, reading over his shoulder. "It's not great. But it's not unexpected either. They make it sound like I was some kind of gold digger who trapped you with a pregnancy. Anyone who knows you knows that's ridiculous. But people who don't know me will believe it. And Marcus will have to deal with the fallout at school. Damien felt his anger rising at the thought of his son being subjected to gossip and speculation about his parents' relationship. I'll talk to his principal. Make sure the school is prepared to handle any inappropriate questions or comments. That's not enough. Once this story spreads, Marcus will be followed by reporters and subjected to scrutiny he doesn't deserve. Then I'll hire security. I'll do whatever it takes to protect him. Aurora studied his face, seeing genuine concern for Marcus's well-being, but also recognition that the situation was spiraling beyond their control. Maybe you should reconsider your family's offer, she said quietly. Take the severance package and agree to keep Marcus's paternity private. It would protect him from this kind of attention. Absolutely not. I won't teach my son that he's something to be ashamed of or hidden. Even if it means subjecting him to public scrutiny and media attention, even then. Marcus deserves a father who's proud to claim him, not one who hides their relationship to avoid social embarrassment. Before Aurora could respond, Marcus appeared in the kitchen doorway in his school uniform, looking more serious than usual. Is everything okay? You guys look worried. Aurora and Damien exchanged glances, both aware that Marcus needed to know about the newspaper story before he heard about it from classmates or teachers. Marcus, come sit down, Aurora said gently. We need to talk to you about something. Am I in trouble? No, sweetheart. But there's a story in the newspaper today about Dad and me and you. Some people are asking questions about our family that might make things uncomfortable for you at school. What kind of questions? Damien took over, choosing his words carefully. Some people think it's unusual that I didn't know about you until recently. They're questioning why your mom and I aren't married and whether our family arrangement is appropriate. But that's stupid. Lots of kids have divorced parents. You're right, it is stupid. But sometimes people make judgments about families that are different from what they consider normal. And these people wrote about us in the newspaper? Yes. Which means other people might ask you questions or make comments about your family. Marcus considered this with the same analytical approach he applied to everything else. Will this affect Dad's job? It might, Damien admitted. Some people think that being your father makes me unsuitable to run my company. That's really stupid. I agree. But sometimes people in business make decisions based on what they think will look good rather than what's actually right. So what are you going to do? I'm going to keep being your father and let other people worry about whether they approve of that choice. Even if it costs you your job, even then, you're more important than any job. Marcus nodded thoughtfully. Okay, then I guess we'll figure it out together. The simple acceptance in his voice nearly brought Damien to his knees. His 9-year-old son was prepared to face public scrutiny and potential harassment with the same courage Damien was still struggling to find. We will figure it out together, Damien agreed. And if anyone at school says anything inappropriate about our family, you tell them that your parents love you very much, and that's all that matters. I will. And if they keep being mean about it, I'll tell them my mom is the best surgeon in the hospital and my dad owns the whole company, so they should probably be more respectful. Aurora smiled despite her worry. That's my boy, confident and diplomatic. I learned from watching you, Mom. After Marcus left for school with Mrs. Peterson, Aurora and Damien sat in the kitchen processing the magnitude of what lay ahead. This is going to get worse before it gets better, Aurora said quietly. I know, but I meant what I said about not backing down. Even when they start investigating every aspect of our relationship, even when they dig up details about our marriage and divorce, even when they question my fitness as a mother and your judgment as a CEO, even then. Aurora's phone rang, interrupting their conversation. She glanced at the caller ID and frowned. It's the hospital's PR department. They probably want to discuss damage control. The conversation was brief but illuminating. Cross Memorial's public relations team was fielding calls from reporters asking about Aurora's employment history, her qualifications, and the circumstances surrounding her termination 9 years earlier. They want me to come in for a meeting this afternoon, Aurora said after hanging up, to discuss how the hospital should respond to media inquiries. I'll come with you. That might make things worse. If we're seen together at the hospital, it will fuel more speculation. I don't care about speculation. I care about making sure you're not thrown under the bus to protect the hospital's reputation. Damien, I can handle this. I've been handling difficult situations by myself for 9 years. You don't have to handle them by yourself anymore." The simple statement hung between them, a reminder that despite all the complications and uncertainties, they were facing this crisis together. That afternoon, the meeting at Cross Memorial was everything Aurora had expected and worse. The hospital's legal team, public relations staff, and several board members gathered in the main conference room to discuss the media attention surrounding her relationship with Damien. "Dr. Blake," the hospital's chief counsel began, "we need to understand the full scope of your relationship with Mr. Cross, both past and present, so we can properly respond to media inquiries. My relationship with Mr. Cross is personal and has no bearing on my professional qualifications or performance." "I'm afraid that's not entirely accurate," replied the public relations director. "Your past marriage to the hospital's owner, your termination from employment 9 years ago, and your current position as department head all raise questions about potential conflicts of interest." "What kind of conflicts of interest?" "Questions about whether your position was earned through merit or through personal connections. Whether your medical decisions regarding Mr. Cross's recent cardiac surgery were influenced by your emotional relationship with him." Aurora felt her temper rising. "Are you questioning my medical ethics? We're identifying potential areas of concern that the media and our stakeholders might raise. My medical ethics are impeccable. Every decision I made regarding Mr. Cross's care was based on medical necessity and best practices. If you're suggesting otherwise, I'd like to see your evidence." The room grew uncomfortably quiet as Aurora's challenge hung in the air. "Dr. Blake," the chief counsel continued, "no one is questioning your medical competence. But you must understand that perception can be as important as reality in situations like this." "And what perception are you concerned about?" "That Cross Memorial Hospital employs physicians whose personal relationships might compromise their professional judgment. That our hiring practices might be influenced by factors other than qualifications." "I see. And what would you like me to do to address these perceptions?" "We think it might be best if you took a temporary leave of absence while this situation resolves itself. Just until the media attention dies down and the public's focus moves elsewhere." Aurora stared at the assembled hospital executives with growing disbelief. "You want me to step down from my position because I was once married to the hospital's owner?" "Temporarily. Just as a precautionary measure." "A precautionary measure against what?" "Against the truth that I've earned my position through 10 years of exceptional service and surgical excellence." Before anyone could respond, the conference room door opened and Damien walked in with the confident stride of someone who owned the building. "Gentlemen, Dr. Blake, I hope I'm not interrupting anything important." "Mr. Cross," the chief counsel said nervously, "we were just discussing some public relations concerns with Dr. Blake." "What kind of concerns?" "The media attention surrounding your personal relationship has raised questions about potential conflicts of interest." Damien took a seat at the head of the conference table with the easy authority of someone accustomed to commanding rooms full of executives. "I see. And what have you concluded?" "We've suggested that Dr. Blake might consider a temporary leave of absence until the situation stabilizes." "Absolutely not. Sir, Dr. Blake is the finest cardiac surgeon this hospital has ever employed. Her patient outcomes are exceptional, her leadership of the surgical department has been exemplary, and her personal life is none of this hospital's business. But the potential for conflicts of interest are non-existent. Dr. Blake treated my medical emergency with the same professionalism she brings to every case. If anything, the hospital should be proud that we employ someone of her caliber. Mr. Cross, with all due respect, the media attention will pass. What won't pass is the damage to this hospital's reputation if word gets out that we forced our most accomplished surgeon to take leave because of gossip and speculation." The room fell silent as Damien's message sank in. "Furthermore," he continued, "I want it made clear to all staff that any form of harassment or discrimination against Dr. Blake will result in immediate termination. She has my complete support and confidence." "Yes, sir," the chief counsel replied weakly. "Good. Then I think this meeting is concluded." After the executives filed out, Aurora and Damien sat alone in the conference room processing what had just happened. "Thank you," Aurora said quietly. "But you shouldn't have had to do that." "Yes, I should have. You're being attacked because of your relationship with me. The least I can do is defend you." And what happens tomorrow when your board votes on your removal as CEO? Will you still be in a position to protect anyone? We'll find out tomorrow. Damien, maybe you should reconsider. Maybe the cost of this fight is too high. The cost of not fighting is higher. If I back down now, what message does that send to Marcus? That his father is the kind of man who abandons his principles when things get difficult. You wouldn't be abandoning your principles. You'd be making a strategic retreat to protect your family. By teaching my son that he's something to be ashamed of, by showing you that I'll choose convenience over courage again. Aurora studied his face, seeing the determination that had once attracted her to him mixed with a wisdom that came from years of regret. What if you lose everything? Then I'll build something new, something better, something based on what actually matters instead of what looks impressive. And if your family disowns you completely, then they were never really my family to begin with. The next morning, Damien arrived at Cross Healthcare's headquarters for what would likely be his final board meeting as CEO. The boardroom was packed with family members, company executives, and longtime business associates, all gathered to determine his fate. Eleanor Cross sat at the far end of the table with the satisfied expression of someone who expected to win a decisive victory. Damien, she said as he took his seat, I hope you've reconsidered your position. It's not too late to resolve this situation quietly. My position hasn't changed, grandmother. I'm proud to be Marcus's father, and I won't hide that relationship to satisfy anyone's sense of social propriety. Then you're prepared to lose everything you've worked for? I'm prepared to sacrifice things that don't matter to protect things that do. The board meeting proceeded with the formal efficiency of a legal proceeding. The petition for Damien's removal was read aloud, citing moral turpitude and conduct unbecoming of a Cross Healthcare executive. Character witnesses spoke about the importance of maintaining company values and protecting the organization's reputation. Finally, it was Damien's turn to speak. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, standing to address the assembled board members. I've served this company for 15 years as an executive and 5 years as CEO. During that time, we've expanded into 3 new states, increased patient satisfaction ratings by 40%, and improved surgical outcomes across all our facilities. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room. I've been accused of moral turpitude because I acknowledge my son's existence and refuse to treat him as a shameful secret. I've been accused of conduct unbecoming a Cross Healthcare executive because I was once married to a woman who worked as a nurse. Damien paused, letting his words sink in. But let me ask you something. What kind of healthcare organization are we if we consider compassionate caregivers beneath our social standards? What kind of family values are we promoting if we demand that children be hidden to protect adult reputations? Damien, Eleanor interrupted, this isn't about your son's worth. It's about maintaining appropriate boundaries between personal and professional relationships. No, grandmother. This is about whether this organization will be guided by genuine values or by outdated prejudices about social status. Damien turned to address the full board. My son is brilliant, kind, and determined to become a doctor so he can help other people. His mother is one of the most accomplished cardiac surgeons in the country. They represent everything this company should stand for: excellence, compassion, and dedication to healing. Pretty speeches won't change the facts, Richard interjected. Your personal scandal reflects poorly on the company brand. The only scandal here is the suggestion that acknowledging my child and supporting his mother is somehow inappropriate for a healthcare executive. The room fell silent as board members considered Damien's words. I have a proposal, Damien continued. Instead of removing me from moral turpitude, let's make this organization's values clear. Let's announce that Cross Healthcare is proud to be led by executives who prioritize family, who support single mothers pursuing medical careers, and who believe that compassionate care matters more than social pedigree. That's ridiculous, Eleanor snapped. We can't build a marketing campaign around your personal mistakes. We can build a marketing campaign around our commitment to the values that actually matter in healthcare. Values that my son and his mother exemplify every day. Before anyone could respond, the boardroom doors opened and Aurora walked in, still wearing her surgical scrubs and carrying herself with the confidence of someone who belonged anywhere she chose to be. I'm sorry to interrupt, she said, but I believe there are some misconceptions being discussed that I should address directly. Eleanor's face flushed with indignation. This is a private board meeting. You have no right to be here. Actually, Aurora replied calmly, as the chief of surgery at your flagship hospital and the mother of your potential heir, I think I have every right to be here. She moved to the front of the room with the same commanding presence she brought to surgical consultations. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Dr. Aurora Blake. Some of you may remember me as Aurora Mansfield, the nurse who was married to your current CEO 9 years ago. Uncomfortable murmurs filled the room. I'm here to clarify some facts that seem to be causing confusion. First, I was not terminated from Cross Memorial because of poor performance or inappropriate conduct. I was fired because Mr. Cross decided that having a nurse for a wife reflected poorly on his family's social status. The room grew deadly quiet. Second, I did not trap Mr. Cross with an unexpected pregnancy. I discovered I was pregnant 3 weeks after he divorced me, at which point he was already engaged to someone he considered more socially appropriate. Several board members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Third, I have built my career entirely on merit. Every position I've held, every promotion I've earned, every surgical success I've achieved has been the result of my own qualifications and dedication. My personal relationship with Mr. Cross has never influenced my professional advancement in any way. Aurora paused, letting her words sink in. Now regarding my son. Marcus is a brilliant, compassionate child who wants to become a doctor so he can help other people. He's been raised to value education, integrity, and service to others. If those qualities are somehow embarrassing to the Cross family, then perhaps the problem isn't with my son's character. She turned to face Eleanor directly. Mrs. Cross, you're concerned about maintaining family values and protecting the company's reputation. Let me suggest that discriminating against working mothers and denying the existence of your own great-grandson are not the values that will attract the best medical professionals or inspire public confidence in your organization. How dare you lecture me about family values? Eleanor sputtered. You're nothing but a what? Aurora interrupted. A woman who worked her way through medical school while raising a child alone, a surgeon who saves lives every day, a mother who's raised a son to believe he can achieve anything through hard work and dedication. The challenge in Aurora's voice was unmistakable. If those accomplishments aren't worthy of respect in your family, then perhaps Mr. Cross is right to distance himself from your expectations. Aurora turned back to address the full board. Ladies and gentlemen, you have a choice to make. You can remove Mr. Cross for the crime of acknowledging his son and supporting the woman who raised that child alone. Or you can embrace the opportunity to show that Cross Healthcare values substance over status, medical excellence over social connections, and family loyalty over public relations concerns. She gestured toward Damien. This man chose his son over his social standing. He chose integrity over convenience. He chose love over fear. Those are exactly the qualities you want in a leader, especially in healthcare where compassion and courage can mean the difference between life and death. Aurora moved toward the door, then turned back for one final statement. My son and I don't need the Cross family's approval or acceptance. We've built a wonderful life without either. But if you choose to reject us, you'll be losing the opportunity to know an extraordinary child and to be led by a man who's finally learned what really matters in life. With that, she walked out, leaving a room full of executives to contemplate the choice she'd laid before them. The board voted 30 minutes later. By a margin of 7-5, they rejected the petition for Damien's removal. Eleanor Cross stormed out without speaking to anyone, followed by the family members who had supported her efforts to force Damien's resignation. Congratulations, Richard said with grudging respect as the boardroom emptied. You managed to turn a potential scandal into a public relations victory. I didn't do anything, Damien replied. Aurora did. She stood up for our family when she didn't have to. She's quite remarkable. Yes, she is. Damien found Aurora in her office at Cross Memorial, reviewing surgical schedules with the focused intensity that characterized everything she did. Thank you, he said from the doorway. For what? For saving my career. For defending our family. For being braver than I've ever been. Aurora looked up from her charts. I didn't do it for you. I did it for Marcus. He deserves a father who's proud to claim him. And what about us? After everything that's happened, is there any chance we could build something together? Aurora studied his face, seeing the hope and fear in his eyes as he waited for her answer. I think, she said slowly, that maybe we could try. Really? You stood up to your family. You chose Marcus over your social status. You proved that you've learned what actually matters. Does that mean you trust me? It means I'm willing to see if I can learn to trust you again. Damien felt his heart soar with cautious hope. What would that look like? Taking things slowly. Dating like normal people do. Letting Marcus get used to the idea that his parents might be together. Seeing if what we feel for each other now can support the kind of partnership we never had before. I'd like that very much. And Damien? No more secrets. No more choosing other people's opinions over our family's well-being. If we're going to do this, we do it honestly and completely. Agreed. Aurora, I love you. I've never stopped loving you. But I love who you've become even more than who you were. I love you too. The man you've become, not just the memory of who you used to be. 6 months later, Damien proposed to Aurora in the same hospital cafeteria where they'd first met during her nursing residency. Marcus, now 10 years old and more confident than ever, served as the ring bearer at their wedding in Aurora's backyard. The ceremony was small and intimate, attended by close friends, supportive colleagues, and the few Cross family members who'd come to respect Aurora's accomplishments and Damien's transformation. Do you, Damien, take Aurora to be your wife, promising to love and support her dreams, to respect her independence, and to be a true partner in all aspects of your life together? I do, with all my heart, for all my life. Do you, Aurora, take Damien to be your husband, trusting in his growth and change, believing in his commitment to you and Marcus, and opening your heart to love again? I do. As they kissed to seal their remarriage, Marcus cheered from the front row with the enthusiasm of a child whose deepest wish had finally come true. Ladies and gentlemen, the officiant announced, I present to you the Cross family, Damien, Aurora, and Marcus. The reception was filled with laughter, heartfelt toasts, and the kind of joy that comes from second chances embraced with wisdom earned through experience. Any regrets? Aurora asked as they danced to their wedding song under string lights in the garden. Only one. What's that? That it took me so long to figure out that you and Marcus were everything I ever really wanted. Maybe we both needed the time apart to become the people who could make this work. Maybe. But I'm grateful for every day from now on. Even when Marcus becomes a teenager and gives us attitude about everything, especially then, I want to be there for every milestone, every challenge, every moment of his life. And when your grandmother starts pressuring us about more grandchildren, then we'll decide together what's right for our family, and everyone else can adjust to our choices. Aurora smiled, seeing the truth of that commitment in his eyes. I love you, Damien Cross. I love you too, Dr. Aurora Cross. As the evening progressed, Damien found himself watching Marcus dance with his new cousins and friends, his face glowing with happiness. The boy who'd grown up believing his father couldn't be part of his life now had two parents who were completely devoted to his well-being and future. Dad, Marcus appeared beside him with a serious expression. Can I ask you something? Anything, son. Are you happy? Really, truly happy? Damien looked around at the celebration surrounding them. Aurora was laughing with her medical school friends, sharing stories about their journey from struggling students to successful physicians. Cross family members who'd initially opposed their marriage were now asking Marcus about his plans for high school science courses. Everything that truly mattered was gathered in this garden under the stars. I'm happier than I ever imagined possible. Good. Because Mom deserves someone who's completely happy to be with her. She does. And so do you. I know. And I'm glad you figured that out before it was too late. Damien hugged his son, marveling at the wisdom and emotional intelligence of this remarkable child who'd been raised to believe in love, forgiveness, and second chances. Me too, son. Me too. As the celebration continued around them, Damien reflected on the journey that had brought them all to this moment. He'd lost everything he'd once thought mattered and discovered that what he'd gained was infinitely more valuable. Aurora had shown him that strength came not from social status or family approval, but from the courage to choose love over fear, integrity over convenience, and family over everything else. Marcus had taught him that being a father meant more than providing financial support or passing on a family name. It meant showing up consistently, listening with genuine interest, and creating a foundation of unconditional love that would support a child through every challenge life might bring. And together, They'd built something that couldn't be bought or inherited or taken away by disapproving relatives. They'd built a real family, based on mutual respect, shared values, and the daily choice to put each other first. If you believe in the power of redemption and second chances, hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments what touched you most about Aurora and Damien's story. Sometimes the greatest gifts come from our greatest losses. Sometimes the people who hurt us most are also capable of the most profound change. And sometimes, love really can be enough when it's combined with wisdom, courage, and the determination to choose what's right over what's easy. Aurora had been thrown away for being just a nurse, but she'd returned as something far more powerful, a woman who knew her worth, a mother who'd raised an extraordinary child, and a surgeon who held lives in her hands every day. She'd proven that success isn't about where you start, but about who you choose to become. Damien had learned that true strength wasn't about maintaining control or winning approval, but about having the courage to admit mistakes and fight for what really mattered. And Marcus had shown them both that children don't need perfect parents, just honest ones who love them unconditionally and teach them to believe in their own worth. In the end, the woman who'd been deemed not good enough had given Damien the richest life imaginable, not because of what she could provide for his social status or family legacy, but because of who she was as a person, brilliant, compassionate, strong, and capable of forgiveness even when it wasn't deserved. Their love story wasn't about perfection or easy answers. It was about growth, redemption, and the beautiful truth that it's never too late to choose love over fear, substance over status, and family over everything else that pretends to matter. Sometimes the heart that's been broken can heal stronger than before. Sometimes the love that's been lost can be found again, deeper and more meaningful than it ever was the first time. And sometimes, just sometimes, everyone gets the second chance they need to build the life they were always meant to have. This is Aurora, Damien, and Marcus Cross, proving that the best families aren't born from perfection, but from the courage to fight for each other, the wisdom to forgive past mistakes, and the determination to build something beautiful from the pieces of what came before. Subscribe for more incredible stories about love, redemption, and the power of never giving up on the people who matter most. Because everyone deserves a love story that reminds them that it's never too late to choose courage over comfort, truth over convenience, and family over everything else the world says should matter more.